The LA Clippers, a team that certainly 2 weeks ago, while wouldn't be the overwhelming favorite, there isn't an overwhelming favorite in the West. Certainly a team that many would have picked to come out of the Western Conference and get to the NBA Finals. And then Paul George goes down with what looked like a very bad knee injury. It was kind of ugly, but we got an update today that's good, Rob. He did not have any torn ligaments.
No, that is huge, Chris. That's huge.
It's huge, right? Just a sprained right knee, and he'll be reassessed in 2 to 3 weeks. So looks like he'll miss the rest of the regular season, but there is at least the possibility that he could come back at some point in the first round of the playoffs. And so especially, Rob, if they can avoid the play-in, then that is big for them. Gives them a few more days, and then maybe a few extra days for him.
Where do they sit right now?
Himself right. Right now, they're in fifth. They're the fifth seed in the West.
Okay.
They have a 2-game lead over seventh seeded Minnesota. Golden State is sixth at 1 game behind the Clippers, and Minnesota is seventh, 2 games back. But it's tight. Dallas, the Lakers, and the Pelicans, and Oklahoma City are all just 2.5 games behind the Clippers. So there's, like I said, it's exciting. There's a lot of jostling, and a lot of these teams play each other, Rob. And that was the case last night. The Clippers played Oklahoma City and beat them, and without Paul George, obviously. Now, people might say, oh, Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City had won 8 of its last 10 games, Rob, and they were playing really good basketball.
No. I know. We keep getting caught up on the teams, Chris.
Yep.
And you can't look at it like that. You can't keep blaming the Sacramento Kings for the past. Talk about this year. And you just said it. OKC, 8 out of 10. I don't care what league you're playing in. They won 8 out of 10. I don't know who's on the schedule, but they did win those games.
Anybody can win 1, but anybody can't win 8.
Especially 8 out of 10. Anybody can win 1, remember that. Even I can win 1. No, but you know, right. And I think sometimes we get caught up with teams and we just go, oh, OKC. They haven't been good since Durant and Harden left.
Right. Absolutely. All right, let me hit you with this then, Rob. Knowing now that it's possible Paul George could play in the first round of the playoffs, do you think the Clippers are still alive for a Western Conference title?
Yes, because Paul George isn't out for the year, Chris. He didn't have torn ligaments, you know what I mean, or damage where he can recover and be back. That team is really deep. They have a good coach. And their biggest bugaboo, other than they did choke that one series down against Denver. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That was a choke job, one of the all-time choke jobs. Kawhi didn't show up. Paul George didn't. Doc Rivers, I don't know what he was doing that night. That nobody showed up. That was awful. But because they were up 3-1 in that series, and they wound up choking down the next 3. Right. But this team is really well put together, Chris. They have a deep bench. They got a lot of good players, depth. I like the way it's constructed, but it all is about having everybody being able to put it all together. And now you get the news that Paul George is not the end of the season for him, and there's hope. And especially since there's no, tears or whatever, or where he's got to have surgery or some other situation that's going to sideline him or he's done for the season, you could be optimistic about the Clippers, especially in the West where there's no overwhelming favorite.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, sure. There's still questions about the Clippers because will Paul George be back? How soon will he be back? How will he play when he comes back? But Lakers, questions, right? LeBron. Warriors, questions. Can they win on the road? Phoenix Suns, questions. Kevin Durant, how well will he fit in? We think he'll fit in well. He looked like he did the first 3 games that he played, but still, very little time together with his new teammates. Denver, questions. Porous defense, not very good. Sacramento, questions. Very young, inexperienced, especially in the postseason. Memphis questions Ja Morant. They're young as well. Are they mature enough? Can they shoot the three well enough? They're in the bottom 6 in that category. So, Rob, you said it. Everybody's got questions. Now, some are more, stronger questions than others. And Paul George would certainly be on the strong end of that spectrum. But still, I'm with you. I mean, I think my pick, the team that should win the West, not an overwhelming favorite because of the circumstances, but I've said it. I think Phoenix should come out and do this. We'll talk about that later. But you can't write the Clippers off, especially knowing that Paul George might be back, or now that we know he might be back. And there's a few reasons, Rob. You mentioned some of them, but here's some others. First of all, Kawhi Leonard is back. We talk about will Paul George be back. Kawhi Leonard is back.
Right.
And
he's
Rob,
finally turned that corner, Chris.
Oh,
finally.
my. Has he? Since the All-Star break, Rob, 11 games. These are Kawhi's numbers. 29.5 points a game. 57% shooting from the floor. 52.5% shooting from three.
No.
Yes. I mean, think about that. And then, Rob, and I don't know, it's only one game, but I'm going to say this, and I think you would agree with this, and I think most people would agree with this. Russell Westbrook, while obviously you want Paul George back, he's better than Westbrook at this point. But Russell Westbrook is definitely more built to be and more comfortable being a second guy, a number 2, Rob, than a number 3. Yeah. He can't be a 3 that well. I mean, you got to – ideally, you'd probably bring him off the bench and, he can have his own squad with the second unit. But if he's the third guy, it's just not going to be as natural for him. And last night, Rob, I get it, one game. But he played really well. 24 points, 7 dimes, only took 13 shots. Big in the fourth quarter. They only needed him for about 4.5 minutes. But he was a +7 because you remember, Rob, whether we go back to Washington when he had the ball in his hands with Bradley Beal. Sure, they didn't win a championship. They didn't even win a playoff series. But
they made
Westbrook
the playoffs.
Played well and had a great run to get them into the playoffs late in the season. And then Oklahoma City with Paul George. Paul George was able to have his best season of his career there, and Westbrook was the energizer bunny there. He was the igniter of that offense because the ball was in his hands. Houston, he didn't have the ball in his hands much. It was Harden. And same thing with LA. I mean, he had it, but, obviously he wasn't comfortable. They weren't comfortable with him. Now, Rob, and I'm not saying he's going to be the Russell Westbrook of Oklahoma City, but I think he'll be more comfortable, Rob, having the ball in his hands. And the way the Clippers shoot the three, which is among the best in the league, if he can create those open looks, then that could bode well for them, at least in the short term, Rob. So I think they're going to stay in the playoff, meaning top 6. I really think they're going to stay in the top 6. And, if Paul George can come back in that first round, then they could really be a dangerous team.
It's hard to make an argument against that because of the circumstance of the conference, Chris.
Yep.
Really. I mean, that's why you can't rule them out. If there was some juggernaut, if this was the Warriors and they had a winning record on the road and it wasn't dreadful or whatever, and they have some other issues, and we talked about it the other day. Draymond doesn't feel like he can be Draymond. Like those things, they could catch up to you, right? Where Wiggins is. So they're not overwhelming, even though they won the championship a year ago. And the Kevin Durant
if they don't
thing.
get Wiggins back, I mean,
right.
It's hard to think they're going to get out of the West.
Don't you, right, Chris? I mean, like that.
There's no doubt. I mean, he's arguably their second best player at this point. Arguably.
He was huge for them last year.
Yep.
Right? We know that.
Yep.
Okay, and then the Durant. On paper, you look at the Suns and say, if everything's right, on paper, they should win. But you don't even know about Durant.
Right.
Can he, Not that
Can
can
he
he
stay
fit,
healthy?
Chris. Can he stay healthy? He's officially injury prone. There's just no way around it. You could be nice, and he's been injured a lot lately.
Yep.
And that's the part that's scary about, the Suns and why they went from immediately when the trade happened, Chris, like, oh, they're winning the championship.
Yep.
To, I don't know.
They're right there in the same boat with everybody else. I mean, they got talent, more talent.
But there's no layup.
Have you seen, now I've been covering the league 27 years. You started covering it before me. I mean, look, I'm sure it's possible I missed something, Rob, but I really have trouble remembering when a conference was like this wide open. Remember, it's the NBA. You usually don't, it's usually what? 4, 5 teams that could really can get to the finals. 6 teams,
normally.
as far as getting there.
I think it's like 5 or 4, to be honest.
And now, I mean, you darn near have a whole playoff group, like all 8 teams that, might have a shot.
We didn't even mention Denver. Did we even mention Denver? That leads
I mentioned them about their defense.
Oh, okay.
Early,
but I'm just saying, Denver's there. We didn't mention
they're not,
Memphis.
That showed they're not scary. I mentioned
Right.
Memphis, but the immaturity and Ja's situation. Now, he looked great last night, but you have to sustain it. So, yeah, I mean, Rob, it is wide open. And because of that, we think you cannot write off the Clippers.